You're listening to Business Tech Times, part of Google Developer Group, West Sweden, and I'm going to be your host today. My name is Erik. In this episode, I'm going to roll an old interview that I did with Niklas from Sigma IT regarding cloud migration. Because I like to keep these introductions pretty short and concise, let's just jump into the interview. So without further ado, here's me interviewing Niklas regarding cloud migration.
Yes, we'll start. Start by welcoming Niklas from Sigma IT, working for Stena Line.
At present.
Yeah. Want to tell us just a short about what you do at Stena Line?
Presently, I'm in the... what can you say? It's actually very, very complex, but it's also very simple. I'm there to help them with, presently resource problems that they have. I'm doubling for their tech lead. Mm-hmm. So I'm basically shadowing him, helping him when he needs help, sort of technical assistance.
Okay, yeah.
He does more strategy. I do more technology.
Okay, yeah, cool.
So
you're like the expert in the room.
Yeah, something like that.
Nice. So I brought you here because we're thinking about talking about cloud migration. And the reason why this whole idea started was at my previous company we had like this specific issue. We had like an on-premise solution that we wanted to move up in the cloud. And as a new developer, it was hard for me to get like a full grips of what it meant to move things out to the cloud, and first of all what the cloud actually was. And it's actually just a server just standing in a different part of the world.
That's actually one of the most incorrect preconceptions.
Yeah. But the basics of it is the same. So the first part that we had at this company was that like, okay, yeah, well, where do you start with the migration process of the cloud? And do you have any prior experience or prior knowledge of like how do you actually start a migration process? What is like the first?
I've done some theoretical things about it.
Yeah.
Where I've been sort of talking with both various suppliers and also clients on what they should think about, and also in an educational setting.
Yeah.
Where I've actually had this as a discussion topic with a class that I had for sort of basic cloud. And the most important question of all that nobody seems to ask is not how, but why.
Okay, yeah.
Because a friend of mine used to sort of present cloud stuff a couple of years ago, and he always said that moving things into the cloud is not a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, of course.
That you need to have a very good reason to do it, and the reason should not be only that managers tell you to.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But that is the biggest loophole that everyone forgets. Is not how are we going to move it? It is should we move it? Why should we move it? What do we gain?
Yeah.
By doing that, and what do we lose?
Yeah.
Because there's always a sort of a win-lose situation. You will never have a win-win.
Yeah. So maybe the first step is actually to like define pure goals. Like what is the purpose of moving to the cloud to begin with? Like what do we want to achieve? Do we want to achieve like easier scalability, for example?
Exactly.
Or do we want to be able to manage our servers and spread them over different regions of the world, for example, because we have clients in Australia or something.
Yeah. But then the question is also what kind of level of management do you want to do on the servers?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you've got, since you have both service-based clouds and you've got bare metal as well. So everything depends on what is your initial strategy, what do you want to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. I know that for me, as after starting at this new company, which actually is in the cloud, you got like a better understanding of like the basics of how actually to build something in the cloud, and also a more detailed view of what the benefits of the cloud actually is. So in my current company, we run things in Kubernetes, for example, and we use Docker to be able to run like a virtualized environment that is the same for in my development machine as it is in the cluster. And through Kubernetes, it's much easier to scale things if needed. And also the whole point of circuit breakers, for example, if something if something was to like lag or get a deadlock or something, you can have like a liveness check or a readiness check to make sure that it is actually live. And then if it isn't live, you can take it down and then tear up a new instance. So to avoid deadlocks, for example.
True.
So that was a really nice experience when moving to
Kubernetes has another big advantage as well.
Yeah.
It's cloud agnostic.
Yeah.
So you can move your workloads to others, or actually do hybrids.
Of course.
Of everything, depending upon who has the best delivery in that part of the world.
Yeah. But I think all the cloud providers, they create their own like Kubernetes version because Azure has their
the
AKS.
AKS, then GCP of course has the
of
basic
course.
standard of everything, and then you've got Amazon that has their own.
Yeah.
But from a running point of view, as in not a developer but as a user,
of course,
you would always have the same experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just the scalability and also how it scales.
Yeah.
That's different.
Mm. Yeah, another nice thing was just with the cloud for this new company that I work for is the whole thing of deployment. Like the deployment process feels that it has been like farly more simplified. At my previous company was like custom-made scripts, and then you have to maintain those scripts correctly and all that stuff. And
now you can just use the Azure DevOps pipeline.
And then you have some special DLL or something that someone included somewhere along the line, and then for some reason the scripts break and the DLL doesn't follow with the package, and
and you've got
breaks.
version conflicts and everything like that. And this function is this version of .NET, but it doesn't work with this one because it's deprecated and all that. That's horrible when that happens.
Yeah, and then you deploy multiple services to the same machine, and then the services have conflicting versions for the DLLs as well. So that was something that I discovered in this new company, because here we use Helm together with our custom built IOC solution that's written in Python, which basically we create Helm charts, which is just basically it's a description of what should be put where and what type of service should it be and what containers should run, and maybe some start scripts, eventual like an init container if you want to like pull down resources from Azure that you need to reuse. One resource, for example, is secrets, for example, to store your passwords and stuff like that in Azure, and then pull them down during runtime. So that's really nice, and it's I wouldn't say that Helm is super easy because you have to have the indentation correctly.
Well, every kind of scripting language needs its correct indentation. I mean, just look at how YAML interprets things. Python as well, for that matter. I've run into a couple of holes where I've had one space indentation wrong in like a nested for loop, and I couldn't find it for days. It's all about having the right extensions in the Visual Studio Code, I think. That's the main thing. So that's actually one thing that I saw as a big advantage with the cloud. Like the whole process of doing continuous integration and continuous delivery becomes a lot simpler. Obviously, you can do it if you still have like an on-premise solution and you have all the code. But then you have different challenges in terms of scaling instead. If you want to scale up or out. In an on-premise solution, you might be able to scale out, but you can't scale up easily.
Of course. So that's kind of nice. But one thing that I had at this old company was, I think our main challenge there at least was the whole architecture that we had. It wasn't fully like suited for the cloud yet. We had like a lot of dependencies on things that were provided by Microsoft, but that weren't really available in the cloud. For one example, we had like MSMQ. I don't know if it's supported now, but at the time it wasn't supported in between like containers and stuff like that.
No, you still don't have it really.
No.
I mean, you're basically told that, well, if you want to send messages, then use service bus or use queue storage for it instead. So that's like one thing, and probably that's one of the biggest challenges, at least for me as a software developer, to migrate a whole like architecture into like a more cloud-based or cloud-friendly architecture, for example. So that's like one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, at least. I don't know if you agree. I do agree partially, but the biggest challenge that you probably were able to sort of skid around was, since you were already set on this sort of Docker Kubernetes setup, was how low do we go for our sort of migration? Do we look at infrastructure in itself, or do we go with the services, or do we go to platforms instead? That was the wrong direction. It's infrastructure, platform, and then service. Never mind that. But the biggest challenge that I've seen is in scoping.
Oh, okay, yeah.
As in, will you move your entire architecture up as it is? As in, will you define it as code and then just create it as you have it? Or will you actually investigate how your system actually works to make something that is more cloud native, that is more cloud friendly, and that will actually deliver better experience back to the users? Because in the end run, if your users don't see the benefit of it, doesn't matter how many bells and whistles you have. If your user has to wait, then the user isn't happy.
You gotta still like develop the product and during the same time actually migrate the solution as well. And one idea that we had at the old company was to do it very stepwise. So you basically you start with the outer pieces that are the easiest to move. So for example, let's say we have just a service that does some type of math or some type of processing, and then you can put up almost like a REST API in the cloud, and then move that whole solution into the cloud very easily, and then just build a very simple interface between the existing on-premise solution and
you can build a couple of functions, more or less, that take the work of. So you start creating microservices, or actually services. In itself, I don't like the word microservices because it's never true.
I've heard a lot of definitions of what an actual microservice is.
I've heard that too. And it's very very interesting to know or to hear what management sometimes thinks what a microservice is. Oh, this is small. It will take 2 weeks to develop. All right, we wanted to do this, and then the scope is completely bananas. But we only want to put this in, and then we want to get this out. Yes, but to get this out, you need to do all this stuff.
Yeah. It's not as simple as it might seem.
No, unfortunately, no.
But other than the whole migration of the architecture, there might be pieces like security, for example. If you have an on-premise solution, then you have you have full control over the system. But if you move it to the cloud, then you get less control over the actual underlying architecture and stuff.
Yes and no. When you are on-prem, security is usually not that much of a concern because you are within your own walls. You have no threats that you can normally perceive. When you move it up to the cloud, then of course you start sort of feeling that, well, I have it up in the cloud. Everybody can see it. Correct conception, but still, it's also one of the big ones. But you need to get more aware of how your security actually works when you move things up, because on-prem you can just take the key and lock the door, and that's fine. Here you have to think about, well, who else is around here?
Yeah.
Who should have access to this? How should they access it? I mean, is it web interface? Is it SSH? Whatever you need to connect. I mean, the security awareness needs to be higher on cloud than it needs to be locally, but it also needs to be more planned. I mean, we've had these wonderful stories of breaches with S3 buckets and Amazon that have been leaking information just because they weren't set up correctly.
Yeah.
Which leads to people like, for example, me then, sort of having to design this and having to think about all the various things that can go wrong. And how can we avoid this, or how do we change the lock around that we deny everybody access, just let the ones in that we actually know. Because on-prem you usually have it the other way around. Everything is accessible, but then you start locking away the people that shouldn't.
But have you gotten when you talked about this cloud and stuff with customers, have you gotten concerns regarding legal things as well? Because
Yeah,
I
of
guess
course.
there can be like legal things like certain things need to be on your actual physical servers. It can't be put.
Not in that way, but more legal as it comes to sort of privacy of information. Both when it comes to personal information, but also company IP. One very simple example is that you have a list of parts that make something that you want to put, or I want to put in the cloud, because we have other systems that will use this list to actually build the things. Now, the people that have the original system where these part lists are, they are in some way afraid, because they feel like they will lose control of where these things are. So therefore they say, no, we don't want to move this up. And the only reason is, well, it's secret company information. Okay. It is company information that is rows and rows of numbers that don't tell anyone without inside knowledge what this actually is. You have no way of knowing what this combination of alphanumeric characters actually means. This is a screw, this is a display, for example. Without extra text or extra context, you have no idea what it actually is. It's like having a big box of Lego that you just dump on the floor and then you toss the box away. You have no idea what this is supposed to be. You can build anything out of it.
But just regarding the security parts there, like, is it common that that clients like start with building like maybe a private cloud and then shortly like partially more migrate things into like a private cloud solution?
When they build things
public, cloud solution?
themselves, they usually go public first, and then they start to discover things.
Oh shit! This shouldn't be here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, this was open. I could access it from my phone, for example, and then they start taking more precautions, but they still see the cloud security as they would if it were on-prem. And that is a very difficult mindset to get around, because they're so used to being able to say that, well, this is open, this is accessible, we can use this, but that guy shouldn't be able to access it because he belongs to a different department. He has no need to be here. Instead of thinking that, well, we close everything down and, well, you're in my department, you're in my department, you can get in. It's a different way of thinking. And that does take a little bit of time to cement. Actually, most with the internal security people, with the ones that make policy, because they're so used to how things work, and also how they define their own security context is usually in terms of who shouldn't have access, because we are all one big happy company. But these people don't need to have access.
Yeah,
you've got the same when you sort of think about basic payroll, that everyone should be able to access it, but only a few people should be able to change things in it, and those need by themselves controls. Cloud, the other way around.
Yeah, makes sense. But have you ever like been in a discussion where you had to get like product owners, business managers onto like the whole, because you've seen like, okay, yeah, this company can actually benefit from using the cloud properly?
I've seen that when it comes to sort of moving information from on-premise systems into the cloud, but maybe moving them in like batches or on demand, so that the master data is still contained on site, because technically it's not possible to move the system up for various reasons. This could be because it's legacy technology, or it could be because the way that it integrates with other systems is simply too complex to move. I mean, a system that has 200 on-site integrations, that's not something that you would move up, because the work to get all those integrations working again is simply too much hassle.
Yeah. It'll be done in 5 years.
Yeah, and then sort of limited user base and everything with that. But there I've had discussions with, we need to move this information up because we need to access it from a SaaS system, and it will be quicker this way. Every single call that we make to you takes about 0.5, 0.6 seconds. And if we do that for every single thing that we want to ask you, then it will take forever, or it will take extremely long time, and then we again have the user on the other side of the screen. It basically goes, nothing's happening, refresh, and then we have too many calls that are going, and then the integration engine goes down.
Yeah.
We actually managed to crash an integration engine once. That was actually pretty cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Always fun to crash things, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it exposed a problem in the system.
Yeah.
That it wasn't simply set up to handle this amount of traffic, which was just a fraction of what we would have wanted to pull through it.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced like the Azure costs or the AWS costs just spiking?
Not really.
No.
I've been fortunate that I've had very little to do with the sort of base economy after a system is actually launched. I can give them, I usually give them an estimate of this is what it will cost you if you run it 24/7 at maximum intensity, which is what you basically get out of the calculator. But then the real costs come much later, and they're usually combined with if you have scaling activated on, and sort of what type of storage you use. But for the most part, it's been less than they expected, because they had just a VM that was basically ticking very little. It was just running idle processes, so it was quite cheap. But then they also wondered, well, why do we pay for this during that time? Well, why don't you halt it during certain hours? You know that people will be using the system during certain specific times of day from certain specific points in the geography. So why not turn it off or suspend it during those times? Oh, can you do that? Yeah. In cloud you can do that. On-prem you can't.
No.
On-prem you pay for every single second, even if you're not using it.
Yeah, exactly. But what tends to be like the most common way they move up things? Do they move it directly into serverless, or do they move to Kubernetes and Docker stuff first?
It's actually that they try to move the entire architecture as is first, and then try to scale it down.
Okay.
But
that sounds expensive.
It is incredibly expensive, and quite honestly, it's quite stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, like we said in the beginning, if you don't have a set sort of why are we doing this? What are the benefits? Then you haven't really thought this through.
No.
If you just move things up as architecture as it is, then you run into so many risks when it comes to specialized software, specialized keys that have to be in certain places. So,
oh shit, this doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you've got license servers that are dependent on physical keys still.
Yeah.
And if you try to move that up because nobody's been thinking, then suddenly you have people standing there with a couple of USB keys that are wondering, well, where do we send these to? And suddenly you have the realization that, well, this doesn't work. And then you begin to panic move everything back, costing you even more money.
Yeah.
And loss of productivity and all that. So, I mean, both things happen. Yeah. But I mean, people that are in the sort of solution roles, they need, and they do, sort of think a couple of steps ahead of, well, how can we chop this up? What parts can we move up? What parts are practical to move up? Because certain things might not be practical to move up by themselves.
No. And it might be that it's not practical to move it up like in the beginning, but you have to move up some other things first.
I mean, a classic client service setup with application server database. How would you move that? Would you move the application server first? Would you move the database server first? Would you have virtualized clients like like Azure has the Windows 10 clients it is now? Can't remember. Well, they have a client offering so that you can run a client operating system on Azure. Should be Windows 10 by now. Anyway, what do you move and how? I mean, if you run SQL Server, then it's somewhat easy. You've got various SQL Server offerings, but would you do a managed service? Would you do infrastructure so that you get a couple of VMs that you then have running SQL? How would you do this? Those are the sort of difficult questions that you need to ask first before you even start considering it.
Yeah. It's a long thought process before like
Mhm.
even beginning to like think, okay, how do we actually move these things? It's like, okay, what do we want to achieve with it? Which parts should be like the most critical to move up into the cloud, for example. Maybe you see like, okay, this part of the system, like we can't scale it properly, and it is like a separate part of the system, and it's easy to like just cut that out from the rest of the system and move it up. So yeah, it's a long thought process, and you have to think about it properly before you actually start. I don't know, what do you see, like do you feel like companies should have like milestones and goals, like, okay, these are the goals that we should achieve for this year regarding the cloud migration?
No, they shouldn't have things that are set with deadlines.
Okay.
They should have more an idea. They should have like a guideline more. Like, our aim is to move these and these systems into the cloud, for example, and that would be enough, because then you have set the level of ambition that you have, and also it gives you time to actually define the rules by which you're going to do this. I mean, you can have a basic principle that comes from higher management that is that we are a cloud first company. Okay, fine. What does that actually mean? Then you go down to the guidelines and, well, our aim is to move our internal systems to the cloud, and that new systems should be cloud based. Okay, fine. Then you go down another level where you go into the various rules that you said, that our main focus is to be, we are deploying on Azure, for example. And then how will we deploy? We will use managed services on Azure where applicable, and so forth. That kind of mindset works. But if you say that by the end of fiscal year 2021, we are going to have 50% of our systems in the cloud, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. Even if you're a small company that has like 3 systems, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're too focused on a time instead of how to make it good.
It's not always do it as fast as possible. It's also do it as good as possible.
And also never be afraid to fail.
Of course.
Because that's also one thing that you run across, especially with people that have been in the business for quite a while, is that do things right from the start. Well, we don't know how things will be, so how can we do things right from the start?
It's hard to create like full understanding of the cloud without actually having something in the cloud, and so forth.
I mean, you need to test things. You need to do proof of concepts, a couple of prototypes. Then people start understanding how this actually works. But a lot of time actually goes more into educating and explaining in concepts that are aimed towards that specific person that you are explaining it to, or that you want to have on board. You need to make them understand, but you need to use their own vocabulary for it. Because if I come with a lot of tech speak to a manager that only knows economy, then we can't talk to each other because we don't understand what the other one looks for. But if I come to him talking about that, well, the financial benefits are these, the financial risks are these, this is what can happen if you don't, this is what can happen if you do, and express it in economic terms, then that person can become, well, for a better word, a believer. And think that, well, this is a really good idea. This can actually help us. This can bring more profit to the company. This can make us more agile when it comes to the future, and so on. So a lot of time goes into explaining things.
Sure. And as you said, it's a learning curve as well. Understanding like the cloud. For example, if you have a solution that doesn't work with Docker or Kubernetes or anything like that, then you have to learn all those systems and all those ways of using them properly first.
And I mean, sometimes you have solutions that would work, but that don't work in that context. For example, that you can have things that work perfectly in private, they work perfectly in public, but for various reasons they don't work in hybrid. and then you have to sort of work around that in some way.
Yeah. Talking about hybrid, have you come across customers that go cloud agnostic, or is it mostly like cloud native in the sense that they just choose one cloud provider and stick to it?
For the most part, it's only one cloud provider.
Yeah.
Which I personally think it is a shame, because everyone has their own strengths.
Yeah.
I mean, Amazon has an enormous network. Azure has the backward sort of compatibility with everything that has come from the PC from 1981 and onwards, basically. And they also have a very sort of solid foundation that they work on. GCP as the in a way outlier in this is also, I mean, it's regarded as one of the big three cloud providers for a reason. Many of the technologies that are sort of popular and that are used, like Kubernetes, they originated from Google. Google has an enormous network. They have enormous throughput all over the world, but they're just, well, recently, it's probably a little bit too much of a stretch, but in all this, they're still quite new when it comes to providing public offerings.
Yeah. But it feels like Google has a lot of knowledge of like how it works to host a really huge system.
Yeah, I mean they have the experience when it comes to building big gigantic networks that can interoperate very well. Microsoft has the sort of experience of being a server-based company for not all their life, but a long part of their life cycle. And then we've got Amazon that pioneered the sort of art of how do we send messages between our various distribution centers and make it quickly, efficiently, and also make it work when we have things like outages and so on. I mean, Amazon has come up with a whole lot of things that the other ones built on, and so it goes for the others too.
Yeah. So do you usually like recommend a certain cloud provider to a company if you like get an understanding? Yeah, okay, this company would benefit more from using Azure. Or this company would benefit more from using AWS, for example.
So far, I've only come across places that have a more Microsoft-based focus. So therefore, Azure comes as a very sort of natural extension. I mean, they've got Office 365. They've got Microsoft 365. They've got various other services that they're already using. Then it's only natural that they sort of slot into that. But otherwise, I don't see a reason to just stick with one.
How is it with the customers that move to Azure? Do they then later also try to move into like a more Linux-based system?
Actually, no.
No?
They try to keep it as they want it,
Okay.
which is also one of the strengths of the various platforms. And that if you want to run Windows, fine. If you want to run Linux, fine. It more depends on what kind of services you need and what kinds of things that you can't run on the managed offerings when you need to have sort of your own infrastructure virtualized. But in general, I don't see much of a difference between them in the use cases, really. I mean, Linux you use if you want something that has low maintenance, but that does require a sort of higher technical degree to be able to manage efficiently on your own. Windows you do if you have more enterprise-based software that you need to run that also requires less of a hurdle to administrate.
Yeah. Cool. I think we covered the most part of the discussion. Specifically, like some of the challenges that you might face, both from management and from like a software developer's perspective. Really great to have you here, Nicholas. It was really fun.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for telling us all you know about cloud.
Not all. There's a whole lot more.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that was the interview with Nicholas. It was a great interview, and it was nice picking Nicholas' brains regarding cloud migration. Other than that, if you're listening to this, you can probably subscribe and follow on whichever social media platform this is available on if you want to listen to more podcasts like this. And without further ado, Erik signing off.